Hi, and welcome to the first Prince of Persia development diary, direct here from Ubisoft Montreal. Today you're going to get to see some exclusive new content. First, how our open world structure works. Second, a new Prince ability, what we call the roof run. And third, a deeper glimpse into how our combat system works. The best way to explain our world structure is through an analogy. Imagine a map of a country with no small cities, only major ones. These cities are interconnected with highways. You get to choose how you navigate between the cities. Do you start in city A and then go to B and then C? Or do you start in B and then C and then back to A? It's all up to you. Of course, in order to navigate this world, you'll need to use the Prince's acrobatic abilities. Some of these you're familiar with, the runs, the jumps, the wall runs. Some of them you haven't yet seen. Here to explain an all-new Prince ability is Kevin, our lead game designer.
Throughout the years, the Prince has gained many new abilities. It's been a real challenge for us game developers. Now, let's discover a new move, the roof run. Since Sands of Time, wall run was always a signature movement of the Prince. We always tried to improve the wall run to keep this movement interesting and different. For this new Prince of Persia, we are letting the player run on ceilings. He can use the rings to launch himself at greater distance. Some rings even lets the Prince perform a roof run to a vertical wall run, which gave us many new options. Now it's time to look at our top secret combat lab, where Thomas is practicing.
Hello there. Yeah, we wanted to bring the fights in Prince of Persia to a whole new level, so we designed a whole new system. Our ambition was to add reactivity and strategy that's found in most fighting games. In the conception phase, we used movies like Final Fantasy Advent Children or even games like Soul Calibur as our main source of inspiration while designing our combat system. Our main objective was to use camera, sound, and visual effects to support and present a fight experience that could rival scenes found in cinema. Now let's go check out Dave and animation.
Animations have always been a fundamental part of the Prince of Persia universe. And now with our new engine, we're able to push these animations further than ever before. So in combat, you have the Prince Sword attack button, which is like the normal stance, the yellow for attack button, so that's where she comes in and does her bit, the claw gauntlet button, which is your lift stance, and the acrobatic action button, which is your jump stance. With those 4 buttons, you can build up some incredible combos, just like in fighting games, by switching in between these stances. If you're skilled, you'll push the 10+ combo requirements to access the aerial stance and the throw stance and teach your enemy who's the boss. So Andrew is the guy responsible for writing this new installment of the Prince of Persia, and he's going to explain to you a little bit more about the bosses and about the sound design that's gone into making this game.
For a new Prince of Persia, we obviously needed some new enemies. All of the enemies in this game stem from Ahriman, who's the dark god of corruption. There are the corrupted, who are Ahriman's lords, and also Ahriman's soldiers. Each of the characters is brought to life by the voice actors who've recorded thousands of different lines. Unlike previous games, the Prince and Elika have dialogue available, so you can choose when they interact. They call out when performing acrobatics, and you can even taunt enemies during fights. Each of the enemies has a very distinctive personality, ensuring an experience unlike any Prince of Persia game before.
The warrior was once the king of a peaceful people who were besieged by violence on all sides. This king made himself and a small number of his people instruments of war so that the rest would not have to suffer through this conflict. Overwhelmed by their enemies, on the brink of destruction, the king heard Ahriman's voice, promising salvation in return for his soul. The king accepted the offer and became corrupted. Having defeated all of his enemies, the warrior could not return to his people as he had become everything they rejected.
Think of the warrior as Ahriman's muscle, and he's just this huge, massive smashing machine. And the complication for animation was always creating this contrast between what's basically a huge wrecking ball and the Prince's acrobatic, agile style of combat.
In this Prince of Persia, the dual combat system gives us the freedom to make every fight epic. For the warrior, we want to emphasize his size and strength. David versus Goliath. Our fight designer Thomas worked closely with both level design and ourselves in animation to create fights that demand the Prince use destructible objects and ledges to his advantage. When facing the warrior, the Prince cannot hope to overpower him, And only with Elika's help, and by using his speed and agility to navigate the immediate environment, will the prince have a hope of overcoming the warrior's deepest corruption.
The corruption is a term we use to refer to Ahriman's manifestation throughout the world. Ahriman seeks to twist and turn everything that is good into his dark and dreadful side. The most basic form of the corruption that is plaguing the land is represented by a dark and deadly matter. This matter is everywhere in the kingdom and can engulf the prince or any living form. Although it's the least evolved manifestation of the corruption, the dark matter reacts to any nearby presence and will track our heroes and try to block their paths. There are other, more evolved forms of the corruption that have far superior intelligence and serve as Ahriman's soldiers. There are many types of soldiers, and each of them possessing their own abilities and shape. And that's not all. Ahriman also has lieutenants that were once human. Their pleas and discontentment pushed them to sell their souls in return for one wish. They are the corrupted. As the corruption grows stronger, a light will shine, and this light will eventually meet the prince.
In the beginning of the game, the prince will come across Elika, a descendant of the Ayoras. They are a small nation who have been living in a remote kingdom for centuries. The events at the start of the game will force Elika to unleash a new power in order to battle Ahriman's corruption. Elika will discover many different powers during the adventure, which will prove essential in combat, acrobatics, and most importantly, to bring the light back to the world. One of them is the compass, which helps to point out the way to the destination you have chosen to travel within the kingdom. Another one is the healing power that converges all of Elika's power in a healing ground and then repulses the corruption out of this area. The corruption will then have no more effect in this area, letting the nature blossom again. Lastly, whenever the prince is in a critical position, Elika will help him and bring him back to the last safe place, both in combat and acrobatics. This new system will give a penalty to the player without breaking the flow of the game and makes the prince seem more like a mortal human, which is what he is. Throughout the game, Elika will be able to acquire new powers. The player will get to choose which power to unlock, and this choice will have a definite impact on how the game unfolds. These powers will be available in exchange for light seeds, which only appears in the healed areas. They are scattered in the region and will require the use of all the characters' skills to reach them. Once you have enough light seeds, you will be able to trade them for a new power.
Thanks for tuning in to the second development diary. We hope you liked what you saw, and stay tuned in coming weeks for even more.